Welcome everyone. This is Jonathan Smith, Executive Director with the Yakima County Development Association. I'm the one who's in the blue waving. We are joined today by a great group of panelists. We have some folks who are still joining in as participants, and we also have some panelists that we'll be adding here shortly. I'm going to turn it over to Monica Koali, who is behind me to this side. Jess Camacho is behind me on this side. We're at our offices, social distanced. Some are even wearing masks in here. But we are going to have a good group today to talk about reopening strategies and policies, those kinds of things. And I'm going to turn this over to Monica to go ahead and make the introductions of our panelists and give us a brief walkthrough of our agenda.
Hi, everybody. So today we are going to be going into what it takes to reopen, going into phase 2, kind of some of new laws actually that just came up yesterday. We have Craig Hall joining us today. He's risk management consultant for Washington and Oregon, and he is from BBSI. We also have Roshelle Pavlin from Human Resources Consultant from BBSI. Mark Johnson is joining us. He's Senior VP of Policy and Government Affairs with Washington Retail Association. Sondra, hope I don't butcher your last name, Pieti, South Central Administrator for Employment Security, as well as Jessica Gomez that will be assisting her. Jessica Martinkus, she's the Marketing Manager in Media and Trade Relations for the Yakima Valley Tourism. Carmelo Sorlazano, Advertising Director from Yakima Herald Republic, and Shawn, Magee, which is the Environmental Health Specialist, and he is with the Yakima Health District. And so today we put this webinar together to kind of give restaurants, retail, and office an idea of what it's going to look like going into phase 2, rules and guidance around reopening, directional for your customers to come in to make sure employees are safe, what barriers might be needed, kind of some of the HR laws, or I guess maybe I shouldn't say law, but HR rules that and questions that may come up as things reopen. We also have Mark Johnson that will be going over what it is for retail businesses to reopen, whether it's in a mall, whether it actually has a couple of things coming up from our big department stores that we'll hear about today. And so with that, I'm going to kick it off, and Craig Hall will start.
Carmelo first.
Oh, we're going to go Carmelo first. I apologize. Carmela is going to go ahead and kick us off. You're on mute.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here today on behalf of the Yakima Herald and appreciate everybody's time. Today I'm just going to spend a couple minutes just going over a couple items related to advertising and marketing. Obviously with COVID, we did see with some of our business clients, we did see some knee-jerk reactions of, putting advertising on hold, putting marketing on hold. And so for us, I think one of the things that you need to remember is that with the current environment that we are, there is a lot of additional screen time being spent, right? Everybody's in front of their devices. So I think that's important to keep in mind that those impressions or that audience is even larger than what it's ever been before. It's said that consumers are spending an increase of 60% of time of additional screen time. And so the question that I would ask owners, business members on the call today is what percentage of your budget is going online? Can you go to the next slide?
I am working on it.
Oh.
Sorry.
I should have my son up here. He knows some good jokes right now. He's been practicing, so he could be doing some. So in marketing, there's two different areas. You have the traditional marketing and digital marketing. So with traditional marketing, that's going to be newspaper, TV, radio, where we're finding that still to be very important. That's where you're going to do your overall branding, overall messaging, to make sure that your business is staying top of mind. With the Yakima Herald in particular, we do have a daily combined audience, print and online, of about 54,000 daily. And so that digital marketing is still a very important audience that you want to stay in front of. But I'm going to spend a majority of this slide and the next slide before I hand it off to the next speaker is speaking about digital marketing. With digital marketing, there are a couple different tactics that we're strongly encouraging our advertisers, if they aren't already, to make sure that you're including this into your marketing campaign. One of which being video OTT pre-mid-roll. OTT stands for over the top. So each of us, I'm sure, have experienced this, but it's basically those commercials, videos that run prior to videos while you're watching movies, TV, Hulu, what have you. So again, consumers are spending more time on their devices, watching more videos. For instance, me looking up how to cut my son's hair, which I've never had to do before, and am now all of a sudden forced with having to do that, or dyeing his hair. So that is one area that's going to be very important, or one tactic. The other tactic that I would also recommend is geofencing. So geofencing is basically, targeting consumers or customers based on mapping that occurs in your background of your smart device, and then defining what those boundaries look like. An example would be anytime you use your Google app, and when you pull up that app, that little blue cursor shows up and it knows exactly where you're at. So those are all mapping capabilities that are happening in the background. And so with that, it's very important to make sure that you're taking advantage of this new technology. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide, please? So just diving a little bit deeper into geofencing, think of this like a three-pronged approach. So geofencing is kind of at the top, and then there's going to be three tactics or levels below it that are going to allow you to strategically or more better target your audience. The first would be, we would recommend that you set up a target around your location. This is going to allow you to reach your customers, reach customers that are returning to your business. It's a way to send rebates to customers that have visited your store, and then continue to target them 30 days post visiting your brick and mortar. The second would be targeting locations where your consumers are. So this is setting up geofencing around specific neighborhoods or shopping districts. An example pre-COVID would be, for instance, if you're a sporting goods store, and then perhaps targeting Sozo, Festerly, YMCA, targeting that audience who are going to take advantage of your goods and services. And the third prong approach that we would, or that we recommend our clients when they're geofencing, is targeting their competitor's location. Who wouldn't want to target their competitor? It allows you to speak to those customers while they're actively shopping your competitor, and then again, continue to serve them ad impressions up to 30 days after leaving your business. So in closing, I would just like to remind folks that while geofencing is not a standalone marketing campaign, it sounds like a end-all be-all, but at the end of the day, it basically allows you to get in front of your most relevant audience. But in order, you kind of have to use both audience. So you have to continue with the traditional media to stay top of mind, branding, make sure that you're driving location to, or driving traffic to your location so that you have that audience to target.
All right, thanks, Carmela.
Yeah,
so kind of a good way to kick us off, one of the things that's going to be super important as businesses reopen, of course, is letting folks know that we are open. It's obviously easier to do it on your main street with those businesses around you. But as Carmela was pointing out, the world is much bigger than that. And whether you agree with it or not, all of the hype around cases and things, there is a certain percentage of the population that will not be that will be a little bit squeamish to go into places unless they feel that they're, are safe, et cetera, et cetera. And so those are all potential customers, and we'll be talking more about that as we go through this. But that's definitely a big component to this reopening. So with that, I think we are kicking it over to Craig.
Morning, everyone. So just to start off, there's some questions that were sent in, so I'm going to start off with those. Question number one was, what do I do if my employee comes back to work and says that I'm putting him in a risky, unsafe situation where they may be dealing with customers that may have the virus? So I'm basically going to answer that question with a question, kind of. So the first thing you need to do is make sure, have they had coronavirus awareness training? That's one of the things that's required for employees in the workplace that are going to have potential exposures. Secondly, make sure that the written policy and procedures that you have that are in place for coronavirus, make sure the employee is aware of those policies and procedures and any necessary PPE that they need, and then ask them if they have any questions about the training or the policies and procedures that are in place, or the PPE. Sometimes people don't realize there's certain ways to wear PPE and there's certain ways not to. And then if there's still some issues with that, you know, if you're an essential business, you still have to, you know, run your business and operate your business. And so on that note, there's a second part of that I was actually going to pass over to my partner, Roshelle, on what to do if they still don't want to come back to work. So Roshelle, you want to answer that part of it?
Sure. So your employees actually can make a decision not to come back to work, but they need to take a lot of things into consideration. So one of the things they need to think about is unemployment claims. They are decided on a case-by-case basis, but employees are going to be, in most cases, denied regular unemployment benefits if they refuse to turn to work unless they have what is called a good cause reason for doing so. Good cause can include things like being at a higher risk for severe COVID-19 related illness, as defined by the CDC, living in a household with a person at high risk, providing direct care for a high-risk person, or being asked to work at a work site that does not follow the guidelines published by the U.S. Department of Labor, the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries, or Washington Department of Health, without a telework option. They may be eligible for expanded benefits if they have other reasons that they can't return to work. If they are denied regular unemployment benefits because they are not available for work, and the reason they are unavailable for work is because they are directly impacted by COVID-19, they might be eligible under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, the PUA. For example, if an employee has to care for a child in their household that is unable to attend school, or their daycare is closed. The other thing they need to think about is their job going to be available when they decide it's okay to come back to work? Because as an employer, you are allowed to fill your positions. So a lot of things to think about. It's not a yes or no answer. Go ahead, Craig.
Thank you, Rochelle. And so question number two is, what if they say they'll file an L&I claim? Well, unless there's been a proven exposure in the workplace, almost always are going to be denied. And that's the official that I spoke with, because this is the territory for all of us to try and migrate. And, you know, there's
You were breaking up there for a while. Maybe.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep. Maybe try dropping the background. See if that helps with the connection.
Okay, hang on a second. I'll just stop the video for a second.
There you go. That works too.
Okay. So what if they say they'll file an L&I claim? Almost all the L&I claims, unless there has been a proven exposure in the workplace, they're getting denied at this point in time. And that's straight from an L&I official that's about it, because we actually have an employee. If they've been approved that there was exposure at work, so that's why the is so pivotal in this whole situation. So I got a little thing from the LNI website. When will a claim likely be denied? When the contraction of COVID-19 is incidental to the workplace or common to all employment, such as office work who contracts condition from fellow employee. A claim for exposure to and contraction of the disease will be denied. So that's straight off the LNI website. There is some Q&A on that on LNI's website. I'll send a link in the chat here later on. Okay, so for question number 3, where do we look for guidance for our business to know if we are following the correct procedures? So OSHA has a 35-page guide on, how to prepare your workplace for coronavirus. It's big and in-depth, and the thing that everybody needs to keep in mind is that we're in Washington State. Washington State follows OSHA, LNI, and Washington Department of Health. So while some of that stuff is really good, there's other stuff that doesn't apply, because if Washington's standards are stricter, we have to go by those. LNI also has some stuff on their website. The one thing that neither OSHA nor LNI has on the site, though, is any sort of a template on COVID-19 exposure control plans. So that in mind, that's one of the things that I've been working on for businesses, and I've actually had some businesses that have been inspected for COVID-19 reasons, and I put together policies and procedures and a exposure control plan for them, and the inspectors from Oregon OSHA and LNI here in Washington were pretty happy with what was put together. So if you cannot find what you're looking for, feel free to reach out to me anytime, and I can help you out. And with that, I'm passing the baton.
Okay, I think I'm next. So I already answered the first question that I received about what to do if my employees don't want to come back to work. The second question was, what do I do if a customer threatens to sue me for unsafe space? To avoid this happening, I would recommend that you, as an employer or place of business, be sure to post notices of what you're doing to keep your employees and your customers safe, as well as your expectations regarding customer behavior. For example, they must wear a mask, they must maintain 6-foot distance, restrooms are not open to the public, any of that information. Do not behave aggressively toward a customer who is threatening to sue you, and contact your attorney. Even though there's a cost involved in doing so, it is always better for your attorney to be aware of a potential situation and help you avoid the lawsuit rather than hear about it after you're served. I get this question a lot. What if your employee no longer has childcare? With schools and daycare centers shut down, many working parents have been pulled into triple duty as a full-time parent, a teacher, and a worker in your business. If they get called back to work before schools or their daycare opens, they're kind of stuck. Some working parents can get paid leave under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which we fondly refer to as FCRA because that's just too long to say, FFCRA or FCRA, that Congress passed in March. The law requires qualified employers to provide eligible employees with paid sick leave and expanded family and medical leave to care for a child whose school or child care provider is no longer available for COVID-19 related reasons. Those expanded benefits run through December 31st of this year. And to be eligible, the children have to be minors and the employees have to work at a company with less than 500 employees. Another question was, can an employer require employees to wear a face mask or other PPE, personal protective equipment? Generally, employees can. Yes, they can be required to wear a mask while at work. If it is required, the employer has to provide that mask. Employees who do not adhere to a company's rule regarding protective gear can be sent home. However, if a worker has a disability or health condition that makes it difficult to wear PPE, employers with 15 or more employees are covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, and that requires them to explore reasonable accommodations that would allow them to perform their jobs with some other form of protection. What if your employees don't want to comply with temperature checks? The EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, said that employers can check, yes they can check employees' body temperature, but the results are subject to confidentiality requirements. In addition, temperature checks should be conducted in a safe and non-discriminatory manner, and employers should be aware that an employee who refuses to be tested can be denied entry to the employer's premises, and that refusal and resulting absence from work can serve as a basis for employee discipline. That being said, everybody's under stress right now. Try to be nice. Next question, does an employer have to notify staff if an employee is diagnosed with COVID-19? An employer is not required to alert staff if someone has tested positive, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't. Employers should inform employees that someone did test positive, but they cannot reveal the identity of that person without that person's consent. I strongly recommend getting that consent in writing in case somebody changes their mind later. Employers should also contact trace to alert potentially exposed colleagues and send those employees home and implement safety protocols. Next question, can an employer send an employee home if the employee appears to be sick? According to the EEOC, an employer can send an employee with COVID-19 or one who is showing symptoms associated with it. If an employee is worried about a coworker who is displaying signs of the virus, employees should be instructed to share that concern confidentially with their manager, the business owner, or someone in human resources, whatever that your normal chain of command is there. And the last question I was given, can an employer require a doctor's note for an employee to return to work? And the answer is yes, employers can require a doctor's note. However, given that many healthcare providers are overwhelmed at this time, employers might instead rely on temperature checks and inquiries about symptoms. So those were the questions I had. Happy to answer more at the end, and whoever is next up.
All right, really quick, we're gonna move to Sondra with the Employment Security Department, who can also provide some perspective on those same topics that Roshelle just covered. Go ahead, Sondra, I'll unmute you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I just want to do a sound check. Is everything okay? Okay. So going through some of the questions, I wanted to start with a little bit of an update that everybody is worried about right now, and it isn't directly related to return to work, but is on everybody's mind of with Employment Security Department and unemployment claims is the fraud claimants. So I just wanted to let you know, as an employer, if you do have some cases or you suspect a case of fraud, there are different actions that you can take as an employer to respond. So the first point is, how do I know? If someone is claiming on my account, you will receive a letter. If that person is still employed with you, then that's a good indication that you need to talk to that person and say, okay, you've got a reduction in hours, so did you file an unemployment claim? If so, if they say no, then that's an indication. Jessica Gomez is helping us, and she will put in some links that will help you to report fraud on our website, esd.wa.gov, to the Attorney General's office, identity theft at the FTC, and your credit reports. So many of those are very important for you to move forward on, and as soon as you know or you suspect. Generally, these letters or emails will come out to you and ask you if you have this claimant on your have been in your employ during a certain period of time, or are currently employed, and you will have a letter to respond to or an email to respond to. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the fraud issue because of all of the concerns that people have right now and what should they do. And the first thing is report it. To dovetail on what Rochelle was talking about, similar questions about what do I do if someone does not report to work when asked, and they're receiving unemployment benefits. First, I'd like to say that all employers have a waiver right now for a relief of charges on your claim due to COVID-related activity or problems that COVID has created. So anybody that is receiving COVID funding through unemployment due to COVID, you have a relief to your benefits that's charged on your tax rate. So that's the first good news about anybody who is claiming unemployment. Secondly, if someone refuses, Rochelle was exactly right on with telling you that the information regarding how someone is asked to return to work and they refuse. Again, same thing, childcare, schools, if they are sick themselves or others. But what can you do with someone claiming unemployment and you've asked them to return to work and you want to let someone know? So first, every person receiving unemployment does a weekly claim. On that claim, they are asked if they've been offered a job. They have to be honest or there's consequences. If they've been offered a job and they fall under those categories that give them easement to return back to work or gives them options. Now, not everybody is going to qualify under those 3 or 4 options of being ill, caring for an ill or a child, but it's a young child. It can't be, you know, someone who's a senior in high school unless they're ill that would qualify. So there's some qualifiers there of caring for someone who has a disability and a child with a disability or something like that that would allow them to have some older children. But in the end, the person has to respond that they've been offered work. If they refuse work, as an employer, you will get another letter asking, is this person returned to work or has been offered work and refuses? If they have refused, then their claim is reviewed once again. And so you can put in your comments on that letter of refused work due to whatever circumstances. And I think it was Craig or Mark that mentioned document. Someone mentioned document. Send out a letter inviting them to return back to work when and under what job. Because if there's a substantial change in their job, that's also a reason that they could refuse return to work. But it has to be substantial. Send that out, ask them to help with returning back to work on this time. If they refuse, then the next week claim, they have to say, I was offered and refused. From that, you can put in your information. Also, if you believe that people are not returning for just cause reasons, then you can actually put in a fraud case because it is fraud if they're not approved to receive unemployment benefits, and legitimately so if they're not eligible. So you'd have to, you can do it many ways. One is you can actually go to our website, esd.wa.gov, and Jessica will put that up. And you all have, as an employer, if you have a tax system that you're paying into quarterly taxes, then you have an e-services account. You need to claim your e-service account and go into your own account and then report through a web notice. It's confidential that you have these people in your employ and you want them to return back to work. There's also a phone number, and let me read it, and Jessica can put it up as well, that you can call Employment Security Department, and that's 877-504-5607. And we'll put it in the chat. The hours are Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. But again, there's a lot of calls being made, so using your own account to put in a secure notice, a note, basically an email to us saying that these are the folks that return, that I'd asked to return to work. And then unemployment systems will kick into play. Respond to the letters. Some folks, you know, put them aside and they're so busy, which I get it, but please timely respond to those letters, because it's very important that we're able to help you get these folks back to work if they're eligible to do so. And Roshelle talked about the second question, which is about suing for unsafe conditions. I think she did that very well. Honestly, I'm not a lawyer, so I'll be real careful to say, you know, that's one of those elements that you have to take case by case and get, in my view, if someone is doing something like that, you would need to consult your own lawyer and figure out what's your next step. You can, as people have said, go to all these websites, the Department of Health, the CDC, and of course DOL and Employment Security Department, but protect yourself if you have that concern. And then I think I've answered all of the questions. Let me make sure. Is there any questions that have come up in the chat?
I don't think so, not related specifically to this. I do want to let everyone know who's watching and seeing things in the chat. There's been some resources that have been put in there, links to the fraud, where you report fraud, those kind of things. We will summarize all of those following the meeting and put them into something that we'll email back out to you. So, yeah, I mean, if you're already copying and pasting them out, that's fine, but I just wanted to let you know that we'll get those sent to you as well.
And if there's questions that do come up about what I should do regarding folks returning back to work, the last one that I will address is standby or furlough. It means the same thing in our world, and employers are asking, if I have someone on standby, why am I getting more letters about these employees? And they're going to return to work. So standby basically means that you have an employee that you want to keep, but has been put on layoff, but you're wanting them to return back to work on a specific day. Under the COVID CARES Act, we've had a waiver of the standby standards or furlough. Those standards mean that if someone is returning back to work, the original CARES Act put that waiver of job search and standby requirements through May. So many claimants, as well as employers, are getting a second letter of the list of employees they have on standby, or a letter per employee, and do they want to continue. Standby is something that you can respond back to, but because there's been a wave of COVID affected employers of job search for their employees, meaning it's an optional service that they do not have to do their 3 job searches, which is a requirement on all unemployment claims, has been waived due to COVID. The reason why you're getting letters again is because, again, that original waiver was through the end of May. Now we are almost into June and that waiver time is up. So they're asking again, it's an automatic letter that comes out. And unfortunately, the systems that we develop have had to have a lot of updates and new programming. So that letter is automatic. Any time that an end of a standby status hits our system, those letters go out automatically. You can respond to those and let the employee know that, bottom line, job search is optional, and standby means it's pretty much waived until further notice. But I do recommend that you go to your website, esd.wa.gov, get on for the connections to any alerts, keep yourself informed, and help yourself and your employees keep in good standing with your tax records, your unemployment records, as well as the alerts that are coming from the governor, the Department of Labor, from federal, state, and local areas. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Sondra, we do have one question that came in, and I think that there is an answer to this. We just need to direct folks to it. But with all of the different programs, there's state, there's federal, how do a business know which one to apply for when they have an employee that doesn't want to come back to work or can't come back to work? Where is a resource that kind of condenses those to know which should apply in which scenario?
So bottom line is, you ratchet from the federal government to the state. As someone said earlier, that the state has more levels of policy and procedures. So follow esd.wa.gov, and that's the one that I would recommend, because if you're talking about unemployment, it's a state resource that we are putting out federal funds. So the money flows through Employment Security Department to the customer, and that's where you would get the most information. And you need to be sending your refusal of your employee to Washington State Employment Security Department.
All right. With that, we will move it over to Mark Johnson with the Retail Association. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Thank you. Good morning, Jonathan and Monica. Thank you for inviting me for this opportunity to present. It's great to be here with all of you. The picture in the background is happier times when we were signing the tourism funding bill into law. We had funded tourism for almost a decade, and tourism is extremely important to retail and many other sectors of our society. But today I wanted to invite everyone on the phone that is a retailer. We are having a webinar tomorrow at 10 o'clock. If you go to washingtonretail.org, our website, washingtonretail.org, you can sign up for this free webinar for your retailer. You do not need to be a member of WRA, but we'd love to have you on. You're going to hear from real retailers that are currently in phase 2 and operating as best they can during the pandemic. So please join us tomorrow at 10 if you're available for our webinar. Secondly, I'd like to just issue a warning or a heads up, if you will. The Department of Labor and Industry yesterday adopted emergency rules on enforcement of the stay-at-home, stay safe order as it relates to businesses and employees and employers. So as of today, no business in the state of Washington has been cited or fined for violations. The closest that we've come to is a barber in Snohomish has actively and very openly denied the stay-at-home order and has reopened his business. He has received a letter from the Attorney General asking to cease and desist. But other than that, nobody has been cited or fined. That is going to change. And these complaints and these citations and fines will be largely driven by complaints by individuals and employees. So word of caution. And also L&I inspectors will be in the field conducting inspections to ensure compliance with the governor's executive orders. So just a word of caution, that just went into place yesterday. We just got notice yesterday afternoon, and Monica has that and she can send that and put it on the website. Yakima is in phase 1 of opening with regards to retail. What that means is you're allowed to do curbside or retail to go. And while that is an extremely limited form of retail, in our view, it's better than nothing. And a lot of our retailers have been shut down for quite some time and need to start getting some kind of cash flow going again. So allowing retailers to take orders by phone, by the internet, or some other electronic device, and then fulfill those orders when a customer drives to their, either by mail, or if that customer drives to that retailer, the retailer can place the item safely and without any contact with the customer in the back of their vehicle, and they can head out. So that is curbside to go, and Yakima is currently in that. You are not in phase 2 yet, hopefully soon. Phase 2 is in place in 22 other counties now, and a number of other counties are pending. One big word on phase 2 is that all essential businesses, the businesses in your community that are currently working, have to comply with phase 2 requirements as of yesterday. The biggest thing that I want to make sure everybody is aware of, that all essential businesses can only operate under the executive order of phase 2, can only operate at 30% of their fire marshal capacity. So if you're your site, if you are authorized for 100 people to be in, and this does not include, keep in mind, this does not include employees, managers, or owners, anybody that works for the store. But if you're authorized for 100 customers in your store, you can only have 30 in your store until we move to phase 3. So under phase 2, all essential businesses, 30% maximum capacity in your stores, or you might run the risk of being cited by L&I or some other enforcement agency. Finally, I'd like to, 3 words of wisdom to help you with your retail getting ready for it. Number 1 is you have to have a safety plan in place. So sent to Monica a draft safety plan that she's welcome to share, that we put together with the help of our retailers and our safety managers. So please take that as a template and use that to write a safety plan. Number 2, you have to designate somebody in your establishment to be the point person on all COVID-19 questions and following all of the regulations. And then 3, as was mentioned earlier, you need to train your employees and have them ready and knowledgeable about how to protect themselves with proper personal protective equipment, and also to keep their customers safe. And if you can operate in a safe manner for phase 2, then you can safely reopen. And finally, I just want to leave you with 7 things that are I learned on an International Council of Shopping Centers. I know you folks have some shopping centers over in that neck of the woods. And first is to comply with all of the government orders and guidance. Number 2, be sure to have a response and action plan in place. Number 3, monitor closely all of the CDC and federal OSHA regulations and guidance. If you are in a mall, number 4, create a work group with your landlords so that you can work out these problems and issues as they come up together. Number 5, update your employee handbooks and policies, very important. Number 6, signage. Make sure you have proper signage with what requirements are in place for your establishment or for the mall. Number 7, liability waivers, assumptions of risks, and informed consent policy should be in place. These are some things that the International Council of Shopping Centers is advocating for safe reopening, and that people should be doing now to get ready for the eventual phase 2 reopening of retail. But hopefully we can get retail back up and running as quickly as possible and safely as possible. With that, I'd like to turn it back over to Jonathan and Monica, and I'll be on the call for the remainder if there are any questions at the end. Thanks so much, Jonathan.
Thank you. And a couple questions that came in while you were talking. One is, will we be able to get access to the safety plan template?
Yes, Monica should have that. And if you could put that on your website, please. It's free. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to give me a holler or go on our website. And we have an entire retailer resource page specifically designed.
And then another question also is, when we have these restrictions on capacity from fire marshals, orders and things, malls have big parking lots. Some downtown businesses might have a lot of sidewalk in front of them. Restaurants typically have parking lots that are, large. Is it possible that they could use outdoor space to have folks outside, or is the 30% the 30% and that's all the customers that they're able to work with?
That's a very good question, one that we have not had asked yet. And that is something that we can seek guidance from the governor's office and the Department of Commerce. They're making, the governor's office, Department of Commerce and others are writing these guidances and regulations day by day. So they're being updated and changed as issues and so forth come forth with complying with the executive orders. For example, safe reopening guidance for shopping malls is currently being written and should be out any day now, but it is not in place at this time. Also, the facial coverings or mask requirements are being changed daily as more and more issues are coming up. And so stay tuned. That has not been brought up, but is a great question, and I appreciate the suggestion, and I will make that aware to the powers that be that are writing the guidance and the compliance regulations. Thank you.
And one other question that came in regarding businesses that could be open, maybe just a missed comment was, question was, businesses can be open as of May 26th under phase 2 guidelines. Could you just provide some clarification around what those guidelines are again for phase 2 and when businesses can open?
Yeah, so your county is not in phase 2 yet. Essential businesses that are currently open, that's folks like Walmart, Target, grocery stores, Safeway, Albertsons, QFC, home improvement centers, Lowe's, Home Depot, are all currently allowed to be open. They have to now comply with phase 2 requirements. And one of the chief requirements in phase 2 is very extensive. However, one of the chief requirements I want to make sure all of those folks understand, and we sent out notices to them when phase 2 was originally released, is you can only operate at 30% of capacity. So if you currently have 50% of your store full, you're going to have to meter and let less people into your stores so that you hit the 30% or below mark at this time. No other retailer is allowed to operate in phase 2 at this time in Yakima County. For example, a Macy's, a Penny's, clothing store that is not considered essential is not allowed to open in phase 2. They can do curbside, which I touched on, and also sent the curbside regulations to Monica to share with you folks. But other non-essential retailers are not allowed to open in phase 2 at this time, letting people into their stores. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks. All right, one question that's come in that I'm not sure fits any of these specifically, but maybe all broadly is, and maybe Shawn maybe even have some on this as well for those of you who noticed that someone new joined us at Shawn Magee with Office of Emergency Management in the Health District. The question is, are there any resources or guides to help someone determine if they can open up a children's summer camp under phase 3?
Yeah, so camps, as we have the understanding we have at this point, are considered, non-essential, and I think what we're looking at it, and we're still working on this. is we're looking at a camp as more of a gathering situation. Also, a lot of them, the bunkhouses would be considered congregate living type scenario. So phase 3, I would say, is questionable at this point. We're digging into that as we approach that season. But I believe it's looking more like a phase 4 type of situation. I don't have a lot of details on that in front of me right now. My water rec and camps lead person is working on that currently. So as we make more determinations based on the restrictions that are currently in place and what each phase allows for and how those relate to camps, we'll be pushing out that guidance material to the public soon.
And Shawn, with that, we're going to turn it over to Jennifer with Yakima Valley Tourism to talk about the hospitality industry, those things. We did have a question that came in as the conversation has been going on that was specifically related to, you know, what do hotels, bed and breakfast, those kinds of things, where do they fit in? So Jennifer's with Yakima Valley Tourism and is going to speak to that industry's perspective and things that they've been keeping track on. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me. First, I come at this from 2 different perspectives. In addition to the hat that I wear for Yakima Valley Tourism, my family also operates a small business here in town. We operate a restaurant, and so I'm right here in the mix of all of this, navigating how to market a small business during these difficult times. So, I want to start off by echoing what Carmela said about, you know, this really is this is the time when we want to remain top of mind with all of our customers. We don't want them to forget about us during this time. And it might be really easy when we're focusing on the nuts and bolts of getting back to business and dealing with our own stresses to put customer communication aside. But, you know, while business may not be as normal right now, it's never been more important to be seen and heard by your customers. You know, make sure you're out there in front of them, on their minds, so they're thinking about you rather than your competitors. You know, we're all feeling really isolated right now and craving connection. Thankfully, here in our community, there's an awfully strong sentiment to support local businesses. So your customers do want to hear from you. In a nutshell, post regularly on social media, make the most of that no-cost channel. Consider new outreach methods. If you haven't used an email list or Facebook Messenger to communicate with customers, you know, now might be the time to try. Be sure to let folks know the best way to reach you during these times. Respond to emails and Facebook messages as quickly as possible and open the door for conversation. They're reaching out to you, so take advantage of that. Whether or not you have a budget for paid advertising and marketing, there are some simple strategies and no-cost resources that you can access and use to promote your business. So that takes me, we have some questions here. I want to be sure that I cover all of those. Where can I promote my business to let customers know I have reopened when I'm allowed? That's a really important thing. The one thing we want to make sure we're doing is keeping folks updated, make it easy for customers to find information about your current services. If they have to hunt for your open hours and you know, hunt for what you're offering and how you're serving them differently, they may very well end up going elsewhere. So make sure your open hours are updated on your website, on Facebook, and on Google. And we can touch back on that after the fact. I can provide a resource packet about some of those features. Post and email regularly about new and different ways you're serving customers safely during these changing times, and about specials or events to draw customers back in. Take advantage of no-cost methods to get the word out that you're open. We have several resources here in Yakima available to businesses and the community. A list that I'm building here slowly. YakTryNews.com has a We're Open database that they're providing for people. I Heart Yakima is a fantastic local organization that exists purely for connecting the community with local businesses, and they maintain a shop local list. Yakima Herald Republic has a support local businesses list that they're offering as well. So I can provide some links to those different resources as well as some others after this meeting is done. You know, some of the other things we can do are go old school, use exterior signage, whether that's a banner, a sandwich board, window art, or something else, just making sure that people who drive by, you know, become aware, and it gets top of mind with them that you are open for business, even if it's a modified format. Let's see, one of the other questions. I'm afraid business won't be the same to start out because people are afraid. How can I combat that? Absolutely. As we already heard earlier, some folks are going to be a little bit reluctant to frequent businesses, shops, restaurants, and other other places in the community when things begin to open up. There's going to be a little bit of fear, and I think that the return is going to be gradual. For the time being, it's important to continue promoting any alternative services you adopted during closure, whether that's curbside or online ordering, takeout. In addition to supplementing your revenue stream as things get back to normal, this helps you build relationships and customer loyalty to meet the needs of customers who aren't quite ready to return to normal. If you can still offer them ways to engage with your business, they're going to keep coming back. And when they're ready, they'll come back in person. Another thing we can do is engage virtually. As you get ready to reopen and as you're building business back up, as slow as it may be, take advantage of social media and other tools like Zoom that we're on now to keep connected with customers. As folks consider whether or not they feel safe and comfortable returning to business, this can be a hugely effective way to connect and build relationships. And we've seen an awfully lot of really unique ways people are using this throughout the Valley. A lot of our wineries and breweries have been conducting fantastic virtual events, everything from virtual happy hours and tastings, food and wine pairings, and all types of fun events, virtual bingo with Single Hill, stuff like that. There's some other things you can consider if that's not the type of business that you're in: virtual fashion shows, cooking demonstrations, video store and product tours, video product demonstrations. Be sure to share the human side of your business via video, with meet and greets with your staff, sharing what they're excited about when you reopen. And you can finally use video and photo on social media to share what you're doing to keep staff and customers safe when you do reopen. And that brings us really to, I think, one of our last questions. What signage should I have up to show people that it is safe to come in? People are definitely concerned about the safety feature, and it's going to be important to communicate about that. Marketing is more than the promotional messages that you put out there, right? It's every single touch point or interaction that people have with your brand. And that includes responding to messages, being open when you say you're open, and especially the experience they have in person. People process and retain a negative experience far longer and far more deeply than they do a positive one. So if people come into your store and they don't feel safe, they're going to carry a negative perception when they go, and they'll be far less likely to come back. So apply all of those safety protocols that are being recommended. Make sure you're following the restrictions that are in place. Because again, marketing these days, a big part of their experience is how safe they feel in your business. In addition to the sanitizer at the entrance or PPE, let them see you creating a safe environment, and that's going to make them feel safe and comfortable when they're with you. And yes, absolutely do use signage to communicate your practices. Even a simple chalkboard or whiteboard can do the job easily. Again, use social media to demonstrate and communicate how you're keeping people safe. Even more, ask questions on social media that would make them feel safe so they know that their concerns are being heard by you. So finally, one of the things, I think the most simple things we can do, go old school. Send an invitation to customers personally, inviting them back to visit you when you reopen. So see if there are any other questions we can dive into a little some more. I think you're on mute.
Sorry. The question that had come up was around hotels and bed and breakfasts. Any guidelines or specific information that you could share regarding those, or things that they can be doing to be proactive?
Proactive with the outreach and communication. Again, I think with I'm not going to speak to the restrictions and the regulations as far as reopening, but when it comes to promoting your hotel and your bed and breakfast, I think again it's that safety piece. People want to know what you're doing, so that they're going to be safe when they come and stay with you. So you can publish, somehow promote, just make people aware, let them see the practices that you have in place. If you're going to have vacant nights between stays so that their room can be cleaned safely, let them know that. If they're staggering guests, if they have a reduced capacity, again, I think just communicating about safety is one of the most important things that they can do. Any other questions?
We did have another question come in, but I think that it is right up Shawn's alley. So we're going to turn it over to Shawn Magee now. Our office has been working with the health department and others for quite a while now, trying to provide resources like the webinar we're doing today, and even task force that are going out and meeting one-on-one with businesses. Of course, we're wearing the masks, doing all those kind of things, but really proactively trying to help businesses interpret all of these. Someone had mentioned a 35-page OSHA document on opening and those kind of things, and how can we simplify this down? How can we help businesses interpret these documents, implement them, and get open? Ultimately, that's the goal of all of us on here, is how do we reopen safely? So I'm going to turn this over to Shawn now, and following his opening remarks, we'll jump into some of these questions that have come in that I think are specifically related to what he could address.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody. So a lot of the questions I was sent prior and the items on the agenda, I think largely revolve around restaurants and other types of food industry businesses. So I'll focus on that, and if there's questions about other businesses, we can address those as well. So as you know, right now, Yakima County is in phase 1. Restaurants are permitted to operate in a to-go or delivery capacity only at this point. Utilization of outdoor seating at this time is also not permitted under the current restrictions. So moving forward into what phase 2 would look like, there's been a lot of questions around the capacities of restaurants, and does outdoor seating count towards capacity? And everything that I've found so far, phase 2 restaurants will have dine-in service at 50% capacity, and the capacity is determined for the building by the local fire code. So whatever that capacity is for your establishment, you must be 50% or under for dine-in service. Outdoor seating does not count towards the capacity of the building, but whatever your outdoor seating capacity is, that also must be 50% or under. And I know there's a lot of establishments out there that will want to utilize their parking lot, sidewalk space, or whatever space they have to possibly add outdoor seating to their business to get more customers through there daily, help get their businesses back on track. I just want to make everybody aware that a lot of these outdoor seating areas are also approved by the local cities, fire code or city business licensing, because there needs to be adequate space according to the fire code for access. So you might want to check with your local city about what that looks like for your business in particular. And if you are to add outdoor seating, you get approval for that, the health district would ask that you submit an updated floor plan for your business showing the outdoor seating area, so we can update your case file in our system. That way, when we're out and about doing our normal routine food inspections, which we'll start resuming once we get to phase 2, we're not blindsided by that, and there's no questions that come up during that inspection regarding the outdoor seating. What else do we have here? Let me pull stuff up. I'm operating with one screen right now, so it's difficult. Some other questions that came my way are, what new rules are in place that are different from what I am doing and required by DOH as a restaurant? So the new rules under these restrictions, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, all the social distancing requirements are gonna maintain, and I think that's the biggest key to the rules in restaurants during this pandemic, is the social distancing aspect. So as you move forward through the phases and you can increase capacity, you still have to maintain social distancing. So what I would suggest you look at is how you're best able to spread out your tables and your dining areas to be so that each occupied chair is 6 feet apart, or you must have a wall or impermeable barrier between those different seating areas if it's less than 6 feet. So really plan and look at that and how you can implement those measures, not only in phase 2, but also 3 and 4, as you are allowed to increase capacity. So something to think about there. Also, in some of the requirements moving forward with, or recommendations moving forward into phase 2 and beyond, is when you're not seated at the table, it's strongly recommended that a face covering be worn when you're going to the bathroom, when you're entering or leaving the establishment. Employees of the establishment, waiting staff, kitchen staff, should probably be wearing face coverings as well. And there's a lot of information in here, so I'm trying to streamline it the best I can. Next question is, what do I do if there is an outbreak in my store? You know, I think the best route to go would, obviously, if you have an outbreak, you know, it's typically more than one person within a 2-week time period. It classifies an outbreak in a workplace. What you want to do is, if you do have a positive case, outbreak or otherwise, just one single positive case, is hopefully that employee would let you know that they've tested positive. You know, because we all have to obey HIPAA laws. But once a positive case is identified, that person should self-isolate at home for the recommended time frame, which I believe is still 10 days from symptom onset or 72 hours after symptoms have subsided, whichever is longer. As a business owner, you will also want to try to identify any close contacts to that positive case, which is defined as within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. And those individuals should, I believe, should be quarantined for 14 days. You should self-quarantine for 14 days. I know there's a lot of talk about as essential workforce, you can wear the proper PPE and continue to work and socially distance and monitor for symptoms. But the most effective way is to have an individual be out of the workplace for the 14-day quarantine. Moving on. How can I prepare myself for an employee or customer who might be positive but doesn't know until a few days later? Well, at that point, hopefully we've identified that individual as a close contact, and they've already, the proper measures have already been taken to hopefully slow the spread or not allow the spread of COVID-19 in that workplace before that employee has been tested, and that employee is recovering at home or self-monitoring at home or awaiting test results. You get a negative test result, employee is okay to come back to work. But also consider, again, the PPE in the workplace is try to get a hold of some face coverings to be worn throughout the work shift, because that's going to help contain the virus as well and slow the spread. Can I have over 50% capacity if I have outdoor seating? Okay, I kind of already addressed this. The answer is no. You have to be 50% or under in the building, but outdoor seating does not count towards the building's capacity. The outdoor area must also be at 50% of its capacity as well, though. A good question is, who's enforcing this? For restaurants specifically, it's probably going to be the local health jurisdiction. So Yakima Health District, as we are the one that permits or licenses food establishments to operate as retail food and beverage establishments in Yakima County. Depending on what the local cities are doing, most cities require a business license as well, so I'm sure that they would have some sort of authority in that regard. But I will tell you that we don't want to be heavy-handed in the enforcement with this. We're going to approach it as education and a partnership to help you get to where you need to be and operate safely, so you can keep resuming business and operate the right way. But there's always a few outliers out there that just like back in normal times, we do our normal food inspections, people just refuse to comply. And, we go through that process of, we do the inspection, we follow up based off of after we give our recommendations on how to fix things. They don't want to comply, or they refuse to implement anything. We usually go then into more of an office conference with some of the administration staff with Yakima Health District, and that includes me, and we talk about a plan moving forward, and we put them on a more rigorous inspection schedule to ensure that those measures are being in place. I can see it happening very similar to what our normal process was during routine inspections. We haven't really outlined that yet, as I know this is a tough time. It's new and unprecedented for all of us, but I can tell you we want to be supportive and work with businesses to help them move forward. As we all know, this has been a trying time for all of our businesses. What is the punishment for not following requirements? I kind of outlined that. I can tell you it's not just, we're not going to be the heavy-handed agency that we find you not doing enough, or there's a few things to work on or fix. We're not just going to close you. We're going to work with you. We're going to get you there. We're going to help you out. I can tell you that much. Is there going to be a place where someone can report me if I fail to follow the rules? Well, I think those systems are already in place. I know that the governor's office has a reporting system where you can file complaints, or at least they did when the stay at home, stay healthy order first went into place. I know we at the health district all throughout the whole thing have been fielding complaints and addressing those. Again, we respond in as a supportive and educational way as we can. And if it's not something that we have jurisdiction over, we do pass those along to the agency that does have the regulatory authority over a specific business. Example, it might be Labor and Industries, it might be DOH, if we're not the licensing agency on that business. But yeah, there are avenues for complaints to be filed, and we do respond to those. But we realize there's two sides to every story. So we don't just come in ready to punish people or accuse them of anything. We always sit down and have that conversation and work through whatever the issue might be. Those are all the questions that I had sent to me. I am more than happy to answer more if any have popped up.
One question that came in was that there was someone had heard that a non-essential business had been given the okay to reopen by the health department. And the question was, is this an option as long as businesses are presenting a reopening plan?
No, to my knowledge, we have not approved any non-essential business to open. Number one, it depends on what the business would be. If we license it, like a restaurant or a bar, a wine tasting room, something like that, we would have not opened that. I haven't heard anything about that. So no, it's not an option to allow non-essential businesses to open in phase one at this point. And to my knowledge, we have not approved any non-essential business to open. If you would like to address that further, you can contact us at the health district, and we're happy to hear your concerns or talk to you about it. But yeah, at this point, we're not allowing non-essential businesses to open. Obviously, if we regulate them. If we don't regulate them, we're passing the info along to the agency that does. but we'll provide education and support to any business as much as we can.
And there's a couple other questions, and Mark Johnson with the Retail Association weighed in on both of these as well. One was any estimates on when our county might enter phase 3 and phase 4, and Mark had said that, you know, there's really no set time. It depends on the virus cases. You may be able to provide some more perspective on where we're at with virus cases. And then the other question was, how long does the application process take for counties to move into each phase? And Mark let us know that where he's at in Thurston County, where Olympia is, it took 3 days to get approved for phase 2. So if you have anything additional to add to either of those, Shawn?
Is that for Shawn or for me? As of today, this morning, you have 2,958 confirmed cases, according to the news that I watched this morning. But Shawn might have a better number on that.
Yeah, 1 second. I can get that for you.
And Shawn, correct me if I'm not right, but the governor has to see 2 weeks worth of case decline under a certain number before you are eligible to apply for phase 2.
I believe right? The minimum time frame for each phase is 3 weeks. But on all the other stuff, yeah, you're right. We have to see a consistent decline in cases, hospitalizations, intubations in the hospital, and our healthcare systems have to show that they would be able to handle. They have the surge capacity to handle folks that need hospital beds under what is allowed in phase 2. So not only COVID-19, but all elective procedures, your normal hospitalization rates outside of COVID-19, plus what comes in for COVID. Right now, our case count as of yesterday at 4 p.m. was 3,120. So yeah, we currently are the highest per 100,000 case rate on the West Coast. But we do also, and I think a lot of that has to do with we are around 63% essential workforce in Yakima County. So even though there's a stay-at-home order in place, a lot of people are still out and about going to work. But we do have a lot of things happening to try to turn that corner. We're partnering with a lot of agencies, getting into a lot of these larger businesses that have a large number of employees working in close quarters. A lot of our long-term care facilities, we're in there almost daily, helping them out. So from what I can see and what I'm hoping, I know we're getting the resources we need to turn that corner. We're pushing out all the education we can to the community about what each community member can do to help us turn that corner. So, if all the stars align the right way and everybody does what they're supposed to do, and we continue our testing to identify these outbreaks and stop them in some of our local businesses, then we can turn that corner. And this kind of goes into the question about, is there a timeline on when Yakima County will move into phase 2? And could we potentially be the only county in the state remaining in phase 1? The reality is, yes, we could be one of the last county to move into phase 1. And I know it's not what a lot of people want to hear. I want to get to a place where we can move forward, because I want our businesses to open up as much as anybody. The reality is we have a lot of sick people in Yakima County, and we have to continue to be to work diligently to correct that and to slow that. The timeline for phase 2, I'm not sure. I honestly don't know. I'm not really one that my focus has been more on what's going on in some of the businesses that are open right now and how we can keep preventing COVID in those businesses. But I know our EOC, our county commissioners, and our executive director are working hard on when would it be safe to move to phase 2? Because that's the biggest thing, is when is it safe? When is it responsible to move to phase 2 without having an explosion of cases from all the activities that will open up in phase 2 and overrun our healthcare system, and potentially not be able to help people if there aren't enough hospital beds or medical staff to respond. That's the main concern at this point. We just got to get to a place where our healthcare system can handle any kind of surge that might happen. Did I touch on that enough?
So any other questions or topics that haven't been covered yet, or things from attendees? There's a Q&A that you can submit a question in, or you can put something in the chat box. We're monitoring both of those. So,
Jonathan, you had asked about where complaints can be filed, and I know the governor's office website has a complaint filing link if you feel a business is operating illegally. Also, with the Department of Labor and Industry's new emergency rules, they'll be investigating complaints as well, and conducting visits to businesses they feel that may have dangerous conditions or operating illegally. So fair warning, they're now issuing citations and fines. The Department of Labor and Industry is as well. If the governor finds that a business is out of compliance, he can request the Attorney General to issue a cease and desist order, as was done up in Snohomish for the barber that said, "I'm going to cut hair and I don't care what you tell me." So that's what I know about filing complaints.
on the other side of that, where can businesses go to submit plans for reopening? I've seen some plans that have come through. We got copies of them. They were sent also to the Chamber of Commerce. I think some went to legislators. What's the process that businesses can do as they're putting together plans for how they would specifically address reopening in their business?
Well, for the template that we sent out is a guide for retail businesses. Every industry is going to be different. We're happy to work individually with any retailer in the States on crafting a safety plan. We have a safety engineer on staff, and he'd be happy to work with you and your business on crafting a safety plan that would meet muster and adequately protect your customers, your employees and yourself, and would pass muster with reopening when your county moves to phase 2 reopening. But you should also have a safety plan in place just for doing, if you're going to try phase 1 curbside or retail to go, both require a safety plan and employee training, and a COVID point person be appointed for doing phase 1 as well. So either of those two, and we're happy to review any plans that you may have drafted or need help with.
Thanks. Another question that came in, Shawn, maybe this one's for you. If infection rates in a county spike after they've already entered phase 2, would they be moved back to phase 1?
The way I understand it is, yes, that can happen. And that's why we don't want, a lot of people don't want to open too soon before we see the numbers, go on a steady decline and availability for our healthcare system opens up a little bit. Because, yeah, we could backtrack to a previous phase if infection rates spike to a point where we couldn't keep up. That's the way I understand it, yes.
And one of the things that we've been concerned about is and I think everybody on this call and everybody who's probably listening as well wants to get their business open as soon as possible. But one of the things that we believe will be super detrimental is the amount of inertia financially, emotionally, and physically just to reopen a business that's been closed. To only have it close again 2 weeks later may be the final nail in the coffin for some businesses that are already on a lifeline, either getting whether it's a paycheck protection loan or something, or some businesses haven't been able to access any resources at all. So to open up and to go through all that expense, restock inventory, a restaurant that gears up with food and then has to close again, and all that goes to waste. So there's a lot of when we reopen, we got to make sure we don't go back. Any other questions? Well, we've got all of these folks here.
Jonathan, I would just add the governor has announced he's having a COVID-19 update press conference at 2:30 today. So stay tuned. We'll learn more. It's probably to announce the number of counties that have been allowed to go to phase 2, including my hometown of Thurston County. So we're moving to phase 2 as of today.
All right. So no more questions coming in. I just want to go around and give everyone an opportunity to add any last thoughts. I know we can't see Craig anymore, but he's still with us. Craig, do you have anything that you'd like to add at the end here?
Yeah, I think that Mark and Shawn both touched on it. One of the biggest things, besides having a specific COVID-19 plan, is training and making sure you document everything. If you don't document it, it didn't happen. It's basically the way it looks in the eyes of the inspectors. So, I mean, if anybody needs assistance with any of that, I've done a lot of coronavirus awareness training as well that I've been doing for area businesses. So reach out, let me know. And, if you need help with the safety plan or anything else, feel free to reach out with that as well.
Thanks, Craig. Now I'll turn it over to Rochelle. Any parting thoughts?
Hi, yeah. Just like Craig said, and just like they say in real estate, location, location, location. In HR and safety, it's document, document, document. If you don't have the paperwork, you can't prove it. And whether that is your offer of work to an employee who then refuses work, do it in writing. It doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be on fancy letterhead. Even an email or a text is still documented. But document the offer, document the refusal. That helps you if you have a PPP loan. That helps with your forgiveness if you weren't able to spend all the money on wages. Just document.
Sondra, anything else from ESD that you'd like to add?
I just really appreciate being a part of the panel today, and I think my short closing statement is reach out to Employment Security Department if you have any questions. I know that we're in trying times, and we are also here to help you. So thank you all.
And Jennifer?
I think I'm going to put together, I am putting together a resource packet that I can make available through you. People have any questions about some of the logistics and specifics. I mentioned being able to update your hours on Google, and really important at this point, if you haven't claimed your Google listing as a business, be sure that you do that so you can take charge of the information that's out there about you. So I will provide some more information about some of those features.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Jonathan, one last invitation to come to our webinar tomorrow at 10 for retailers on getting into phase 2. The time to plan for phase 2 is now. It's a free webinar at 10 o'clock. Go to washingtonretail.org and sign up if you'd like to join us. Thanks.
And we'll send information out about that as well. Definitely a great resource. And we really appreciate you guys taking the lead on so much of this. We're a small staff, but you guys having the expertise in those specific areas, we really do rely on that. So appreciate that. Appreciate you joining us today, along with everyone else. Give Shawn a few seconds if he has any final remarks from the health department.
Yeah, real quick. Just we're here to support everybody, and our mission is to keep everybody healthy and safe. And try to flatten or stop the spread of this pandemic going through Yakima County. So we're here to support you. We're here to work with you. And if you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out to our environmental health staff and with any questions you might have, any concerns, and we'll help you address those as they come up. I do also ask for your patience if you do reach out. We are extremely busy. It might take us a day or two to get back to you, but we certainly will. Thank you.
And one last question that came in, Shawn, I think you can help address this, is what's the process for occupant reporting a positive test of COVID-19?
For an occupant of a business, is that what we're going with? So
it would be a hotel. So if someone has a hotel and one of the people, or an office, I guess is what it is, more clarification, somebody in the office had tested positive.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, I mean, really, the Washington State Department of Health is doing all the contact tracing investigations for Yakima County. So if someone does test positive, they are aware of it. They will reach out to that individual and identify, where they've been, what they were doing, who they were potentially in close contact to, and they will also contact those potential close contact individuals to discuss with them whether, quarantine is necessary or not. We look at that state reporting line list daily. It is updated daily. If there is an occupant of any sort of business that has a positive case and we're made aware of it, we are going to reach out to the business and work with them on how to stop the spread of that disease in their business place, whether it's a hotel, agricultural warehouse facility, Lowe's, Home Depot, grocery store, it doesn't matter. If we are made aware of it, we're going to be working with that business to ensure that they're doing all they can, and we're giving them all the resources they need to be successful.
So they just reach out to you directly then when they become aware that someone in their building.
They absolutely can. Yep.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate you all bringing your expertise and your knowledge in all these different areas here together in one place for those who joined us today. I think we had upwards of close to 80 folks that participated in today's call, and they didn't come to listen to me. They came to hear from you and the guidance and the guidelines that you guys have and the insight that you have from working with businesses, both here in the local area and in some cases across the state, helping them respond to the COVID-19. So appreciate everyone's participation, and this will be recorded and will be available, and we'll also have the links and things that have been shared in the chat box available as well. So thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks, Jonathan. Have a great day. Stay safe.